Okay, ladies, and if there are any gentlemen, welcome to 60 something, a feature for the over 60s. So you can be 60 plus 14, which would make you 74. You're still 60 something. And I thought it would be interesting for us today to discuss central adiposity, also known as belly fat. And that's when the belly is larger than the hips. It is actually a problem that we should all be concerned about. The unfortunate thing is that it has been so normalized that I don't know. Okay, my name is Esezanambasi. I'm by training a medical doctor. By passion, I love everything to do with health, wellness, lifestyle, and the basics as our creator intended for us to practice and to live how he intends for us to live. And actually, when we think about it, everything is given to us in the word. So there's a scripture I was just telling some people recently that Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 grabbed my attention a long time ago, maybe even before I went to medical school. And I thought to myself, yeah, it is, we don't need to really look far. And the very fact that it is in the very first pages, within the first pages of the Bible, should tell us something. Yeah. So it describes how we should be eating. And so all of us over 60s will remember when we were young, we used to be measured that way, okay, by height. But today, even our youth are suffering from belly fat. So it's a big problem. And I'll just outline a few things. I'm not going to lecture as such. After that, I'm going to open it up for discussion. So I'm going to be quite quick, and then we can discuss. Yeah. So 60 something and still have lots to do, I think is how we all feel. We are too young to be thinking that we should be lining up for pills and surgeries and all that. As I've said, I love everything to do with lifestyle and the fact that we can make different choices. I just want to give a disclaimer right now that about 30 years ago, it will be 30 years next year, I was introduced to the world's leading health and wellness company with which I have stayed and I have learned a lot. So a lot of the stuff I have learned comes from my association with the company called Neolife. Okay, so what are the causes of belly fat? We always say prevention is better than cure. And then we proceed not to really practice prevention, but practice cure. So I have to ask, in this case, particularly of belly fat, is prevention becoming too difficult? As I say, even children are battling with it. Anyway, there is a doctor at Stanford University who wrote that the meaning of central adiposity or belly fat is that it is a clear indicator of insulin resistance. So perhaps we need to explain what insulin does. It is a hormone that governs the way our body uses nutrients. Its role is to export those nutrients, particularly glucose, but also protein and fats, into the cell so that the cells can use them to create energy and to do the function of those cells, right? So if there is anything that is causing resistance of the cells to insulin, then the result is that there is an overwhelming accumulation of fat, initially into the liver, and this might take many, many years, might take a short time or a long time, depending on what is happening in one's life. And then it overflows into the surrounding tissues and manifests as belly fat. So, you know, we doctors were trained that we receive a patient long after they've manifest whatever it is that they're manifesting, and then we set about to correct that manifestation or the symptoms. So this doctor, Dr. Gerard Ravens of Stanford University, said that the solution to this problem of insulin resistance is not reducing cholesterol, as has been the thing since maybe about the 70s and 80s, where cholesterol lowering drugs became very, very popular. But it is actually as a result of out of control blood sugar. And when you think about it, our blood sugar is like a roller coaster. You know, we wake up, have whatever breakfast we have, porridge or whatever, bread with sugar in the tea, and the blood sugar will shoot up, and then it will come crashing down, and then we start the cycle again through the day, through the years, until eventually the insulin resistance happens. So, significance of central adiposity. It is an indicator of the metabolic syndrome. That's another term now that I need to explain. The metabolic syndrome, again, also became very popular in the 70s and 80s, where it was just a constellation of observations, of signs, where people saw that there was pre-diabetes and ultimately diabetes, high blood pressure, and dangerously high levels of blood fats, that is the cholesterol that I've just mentioned, and weight gain, particularly in the middle of the body. So they put those signs together and said, let us name this metabolic syndrome. And to manage it, we're going to start treating the blood pressure, treating the diabetes, making sure that we really scold this patient for gaining weight, getting them to start running when they really can't. And it hasn't worked out very well. Why? Because, again, we are waiting for manifestations before we try to manage the manifestation. So this talk is an attempt to get to the root causes. That's something I love to do. And my association with what I'm doing now, I call it my new career, is to connect dots. I love to connect dots. So just bear with me. It is known that good nutrition can help lower risk for many chronic diseases. That's a fact, including things like heart disease, stroke, some cancers, diabetes, and osteoporosis. I sometimes joke that diabetes is actually a manifestation of a form of protein malnutrition. As we used to see kwashiorkor in young children, in adults, it is manifesting as diabetes. So just so that we look at this again, the metabolic syndrome is a very, very, it varies from person to person, but it is recognized and a lot of energy is going into it. But now, I want to throw a curved ball and talk about craving, okay? It's the powerful desire for something. That's a craving. And the root word comes from, the origin of that word is actually to demand or to claim as a right. That's what a craving is. Now, a lot of us have been hijacked. Our tongues, our palates have been hijacked, and a lot of us crave a lot of food, such as sugar, wheat products, salty snacks, certain beverages. Now, I'm not saying all these things are bad, but what I am saying, they are likely to create in the long run our dependence on them, and ultimately we don't get the nutrition that we need to be having. And a craving is driven by malnutrition, as I'm going to show just now. So lots of things can cause cravings: drugs, certain activities, social media. But yes, cravings, a commonly overlooked cause of cravings in today's world is malnutrition. Because we are eating so many highly processed foods, many of them are presented well, and we can actually even believe that we are getting everything that we need, but that is not necessarily the case, unfortunately. So many people ask themselves, do we really need to supplement vitamins? Yes, we do, because a lot of the food supply today is not giving us as simple a thing as vitamin B complex or vitamin C. Both are water-soluble vitamins. Both are very, very important. With vitamin B complex, deficiency disorders are very many, very varied, and often not recognized until too late. And then the main role of vitamin B complex, vitamin B complex is, as you hear, a complex. It has many B's in there. But the main role is to turn food into energy, and it is very, very important for the functioning of all our cells, especially in a key organ like the liver. And then vitamins are critical for our health, yeah? We must be able to trust the source if you should choose to say, okay, fine, I need to supplement. You need to know that your vitamin supplement is actually from food, and that food is in the human food chain. And I say that because both vitamin C and vitamin B complex have been synthesized in the lab, and a lot of the products that are sold are actually synthetic. They're a waste of money, a waste of time. The body doesn't know what to do with them. But they tick that box that, yeah, I am supplementing, so it's fine. And then let's talk about minerals. It's very important to supplement minerals. As an example, chromium, very highly deficient, as magnesium, zinc. Then you can talk about calcium and potassium. They are deficient in our food supply because of the way food is supplied to us through the processing and the marketing and the early harvesting. And of course, the soils themselves have been depleted quite remarkably by the methods of agriculture today. Chromium, as an example, is very important to enhance insulin signaling and thereby increase insulin sensitivity. Its absence, therefore, will lead to insulin resistance. And that, we have agreed, is one of the root causes of belly fat. Okay, so this will affect carbohydrate, protein, and lipid metabolism. And then we've talked about things like magnesium, zinc, and all those that are important for enzymes. May I ask you to please mute so that we don't have any feedback? Gladys, if you can please mute. your microphone. Thank you. Unfortunately, once I'm in the presentation, I forgot to, yeah. Okay, so let's look at the role of hormonal balance, right? And I just want us to understand that balancing hormones is very, very important. Insulin is a hormone. It's a very important hormone. But all hormones are important in the sense that they all have to work together. It's very much like if you go to the orchestra, okay, a concert where there's an orchestra. Every single instrument in that orchestra has to be able to interact well with the rest of the instruments for there to be harmony, synergy, and a beautiful sound. That is hormones as well. Now, if there is imbalance, then there are problems. So let's talk a little bit about imbalances and the cravings that can result. Central to the creation of cravings is the sensation created by the interplay of hormones. For example, dopamine is the pleasure hormone. And if there is an imbalance there, such as gut issues, believe it or not, then dopamine, serotonin, and a few other hormones that I could rattle off will be totally imbalanced. Then cortisol, as well as adrenaline. Those are stress hormones that are released by the adrenal gland. If there is any overwhelming stress, a lot of people are all chronically stressed. It isn't like the good days, the old days where there was a stressor, such as a wild animal chasing you, and then you run away, and then the effect of these hormones would subside. Today, it is chronic. It's just ongoing. And that is creating chronic imbalance of hormones. And then I've talked about insulin. We can't run away from that. We just now need to know that, yes, we are to be wiser as regards our food supply. And then there is a hormone called ghrelin. This one stimulates the appetite. It increases food intake, and it also promotes fat storage. Ghrelin in our food supply that we are now having is an all-time high because of the way the food plays havoc with our hormonal balance. So when we think about imbalances, symptoms, I had to put changes in menstruation in small letters because all of us who are on this call should be 60 something. So hopefully for women, we are no longer menstruating. Erectile dysfunction, unwanted changes in the libido, difficulty regulating temperature. Why? Because your thyroid hormones might be totally out of sync. Changes in bowel habits. That happens very, very often. A lot of people have that as a complaint. Persistent fatigue. Many of us become so tired that we can no longer exercise, and that is a sure recipe for gaining weight. And then other symptoms, mood disorders for hormonal imbalance. I've talked about various hormones, but yes, mood disorders. Hair growth disorders. Some lose weight, lose a lot of hair. Others grow hair where they're not supposed to be growing. It might become a masculine hair growth pattern and for a woman. And that is a symptom. Memory loss, brain fog, osteoporosis. It happens as we grow older. It needn't happen if the hormones are looked after well. And sleep disorders. And of course, what we are discussing today in particular is unintended weight changes. So I want us to remember the importance of the liver and why it is super important to always think How is my liver doing? Am I looking after my liver? Because the liver is the key detox organ in the body. All hormones are sorted out, are metabolized and eliminated by the liver. And elimination is very important to ensure that hormones do not recycle. And elimination, I need to put here, includes that symptom that we said is common, and that is constipation or change in bowel habits, okay? And now I want to introduce a term, xenoestrogens. That must always be on your list of reasons for belly fat. So you ask yourself, what are xenoestrogens? Well, in our environment, in our day-to-day usage products and materials, we have what we call xenoestrogens. Those are estrogen-like compounds that we use on a day-to-day basis. Things like in our skincare, in our detergents, the way we clean our homes and offices. The fabrics we are wearing, a lot of them have xenoestrogens in them, and those with constant exposure to our skins can mess up our hormonal balance. And then the food we are eating, a lot of xenoestrogens there. Petroleum, the fumes around us. Okay, so you get the picture. All those are a good reason for belly fat to accumulate. Now, I hope you are getting the picture that this isn't something that happens overnight. It has been happening over many years. And we need to perhaps begin with our mindsets. And this is the purpose of this talk, actually, to just point out that if we know the root causes, we are more likely to understand where to begin. With any habit or craving, it's important to understand one thing, that it is never too late to make a different choice or to make changes. And one important thing is to know the root causes, to know the triggers. Don't ignore them. Some people, for example, love snacks and salty things, and they crave all those things. So talking about cravings and other habits, it becomes harder to deal with them if you leave them and don't deal with them, if you ignore them. So ultimately, the outcomes are disease processes, such as what we've discussed, the belly fat, the metabolic syndrome. Then the third point I want you to be aware of is the role of inflammation. Inflammation is actually the body's response to anything that comes along to irritate the cells, and it also can lead to what we call oxidative damage. One of my 60-something sessions, I actually talked about cancer, actually the first one. I talked about how we can prevent oxidative damage to the cells, because that is the root cause of cancer. So yes, inflammation and oxidative damage. Then I want us to focus on being healthy. What are our responsibilities? And these are that's a good way to remember. Dress for great health. Your diet. Be mindful about the diet. It can be difficult. Rest and adequate sleep. Exercise. Stress management. And we ask the question, is it really necessary to supplement? Yes, it is, but you have to be so aware of the supplements that you use. So I just want to say there are solutions. We just need to empower our body at a cellular level so that all the cells throughout the body work well. Okay, so I would like to share some solutions. And I was actually also looking to see whether Eve Odonga or Jock was on the call. We have solutions. And the first set of solutions you may have heard of, you may not know about, are a range of cleaning products that are totally non-toxic. Why I am very, very passionate about them, and the reason personally I chose to get involved with this opportunity was because I was looking for non-toxic cleaning products.
Can you talk more about the inflammation, because it's very confusing about with the messages that we get from various sources. So it would be really good if you could give a little bit more about the inflammation and the causes and how to address it. And I'm sure you're going to address it later on, but I was more curious about your statement, and I wanted to hear more.
More information on inflammation. Okay, the first thing to understand and to appreciate is that the body's response to anything that might lead to infection or irritation or injury or any source of stress, the body should have a healthy inflammatory response. So the word inflammation should be taken both as a positive and a negative. So let's start with the positive. If the body has the resources and the resilience to respond correctly, it will deal with whatever is causing that stress. It will deal with the stressor. And then when it has dealt with the stressor and brought things under control as appropriately and as adequately as possible, then the inflammatory response should cease. It should come to an end, and it shouldn't carry on and on and on. Now, the problem is that we are faced with so many stressors, so many causes of stress, that inflammation is not very well handled by the body. And one might ask oneself, why is that the reason for the body being incapable of handling inflammation? Okay, everything is on a spectrum, a very, very big spectrum. So there is never, ever one single cause. And that is the one thing that perhaps I argued a lot in my coming to 40 years of medical practice, where we are literally taught to believe that one thing leads to one outcome. It's not the case, okay? So I've accepted that no, it is never one thing and there is never one outcome. However, by knowing how to manage and mitigate and ameliorate and all those beautiful words, the way the body responds, and by knowing what the body needs to respond appropriately, one can make a huge dent in the damage that can be caused by that inflammation. So now, very much like in a profession, the medical profession, we have learned to blame things, okay? We, for example, blame a rise in blood pressure, or we blame a pain, okay? The pain, as a result of inflammation, is the body telling you that there's something wrong, there's something not quite right. The proper response should be, okay, so what should I do about this? How can I supply the tools, the wherewithal? How can I help myself to overcome this and become more resilient, so that if it is the immune system that needs to be jacked up, so be it. If it is the hormones that need to be rebalanced, so be it. If it is this weight that has chosen to settle in the middle of my tummy, that is what we're discussing today, right? If it is that weight that is causing such problems, how can I change something about my lifestyle before I resort to drugs and medication and adverse methods? How can I just change something in order to empower? I like to use that word very much, empower my body at a cellular level to be able to respond to this more appropriately. And I think the more we ask that question, the wiser we become, because I believe our Creator has given us the wisdom and the tools in our diet, in the way we rest, relax, sleep. And let me just talk about sleep, for example. You know, we need to get a certain amount of sleep, and good quality sleep, particularly from between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., maybe even 6, but those 6 hours are critical. Then they tell us better to have 7 or 8 hours sleep, but those 6 hours are critical because a lot of things happen during those 6 hours of sleep. Okay, but what has modern lifestyle done? We have night jobs, we have blue light, we have all these EMFs, right? Like now, I'm actually trying to finish off so that we all calm down and allow the electromagnetic fields to sort themselves. Then we have things in our food supply, preservatives, herbicides. We have all sorts of foods that our genetic makeup never knew. And then we have toxic relationships. And then we have financial stress. So there is a lot going on all the time. All those are sources of inflammation. Okay? But the medical profession loves to say, no, it is only that infection, or it is only that chemical, or it is, nobody ever even thinks to say, what is the history here? What perhaps happened 40 years ago? Were you bullied at school? You know, things like that. So inflammation is a huge topic. It's a topic that needs to be dealt with much sensitivity. And I think the more discourses we have, the more discussions such as this one that we can have, the more we become wiser. And obviously referring to what our Creator wanted for us in the first place, referring there, we can come up with a lot of answers. Okay. Is there anything else? I don't know whether that has answered your question. There is no simple answer. Really, there is no simple answer. And that's why when it comes to the physical realm, when it comes to material, what we can control, I always teach my teams. I see somebody in my team on the call called Namojusi. Welcome, Joan. Thank you for being here. You know, I say control the controllables. And one of the controllables is the soap you choose to use. Seriously. So for a long time, I was looking to use a different brand because I had spent a lot of my years at medical school getting more and more alarmed at side effects from drugs. I just was blown away by the notion that we were supposed to be dishing out these medications with those side effects to people and not even batting an eyelid. And I felt very, very uncomfortable. Anyway, so my long story that I'm going to put in a few sentences is that I started looking for a way to change something around my house. And I started hunting. So the people in my household would tell you that some years I spent just chopping and changing, washing powder, cleaning products, making my own, getting bicarb and vinegar, trying out things. Why? Because I was alarmed at the chemical exposure, particularly when my kids were small. Until I received a phone call to have a look at this. I looked and I did not even think twice. I just knew that I had to change my compounds and my detergents and my skincare. Okay, so along came also a way to feed my cells. We call it cellular nutrition. And this is our foundational product. It's been with us since 1958. And I'll give you some background to it. Because food processing happened, we can't escape that fact. We are actually not getting the grain oils that we are supposed to be getting. We don't get them. So essential fatty acids called phytolipids and sterols are the very things that we need that were put in grain to supply us with the template on which our hormones are built, to also supply us with the right oils to make each and every cell in our bodies. Now, food processing happened, we don't get them. We do not get them. So TRINN was developed for a hospital research study way back. And then the doctors saw then that things were improving for the patients who were suffering from chronic fatigue, various inflammatory conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune conditions. And when they were given these grain oil concentrates, they made a difference. They made some recovery. And it helped them to regain their energy at a cellular level. And you'll hear stories upon stories. Right now, we are dealing with a cousin of ours, right now, as in today, who eventually, my sister in Kampala just said, I will give you some TRINN. This is a lady who had stopped walking. Initially, she had been put on a walker, and then the energy levels just were zapped, and then she was unable even to help herself with the toilet. So my sister took her some TRINN. Today, they're posting things excitedly on the WhatsApp, the family WhatsApp group, to say she is now beginning to take some steps again after months of being bedridden. Now, if you become bedridden, a lot of things will happen, such as loss of muscle mass, such as a release of toxins from the tissues into circulation. And eventually you become sicker. And that is how it is happening. Okay. Anyway, so that is TNN. How it works, it helps unhealthy cells in which nutrients can't get inside to work, and the waste matter that cannot come out, those are converted into cell membranes that can allow nutrients in and waste matter out. Now, if there's one thing you can remember, inflammation, one of the biggest causes is toxicity. That's why it's important to make sure that we go to the toilet regularly to remove those toxins. It's important to remember that these cells at a cellular level need to be functioning, not just at an organ level, but each cell within the organ. Okay, so that study proved, that university study proved that there was improved nutrient utilization efficiency with TNN. And without TNN, there was hardly anything happening, but with TNN, other nutrients, all the vitamin B's and C's and E's and all the minerals were used much better. Then let's look at omega-3. That's a huge gap. Now, Stella, this is an answer to your question. Why there is so much inflammation is that people have an overwhelming amount of omega-6 to omega-3. We're supposed to have omega-3 that is out of salmon oil, and the salmon oil has to be proper salmon oil and other fatty fish. It has to be complete, not just two molecules. Most companies will sell you EPA and DHA. It has to be complete with all 11 molecules, or rather all 8 omegas, okay? It has to be tested for toxins. And with our brand, there is zero tolerance for toxins. And what toxins are we talking about? We're talking about things like mercury, things like lead, things like molybdenum and all those arsenic, the heavy metals. And those are the things that I've just said, when somebody lies down in their 60s due to sickness that has been rising over not 2 or 3 weeks, but many years, all those things are released into the circulation. And more often than not, that is their final undoing. Okay, so this particular brand of omega was endorsed as the only one that the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of the United Kingdom could, with all confidence, give to pregnant women. A lot of other brands warn pregnant people that please don't use this omega because we are not sure what it will do to the unborn baby, which is bizarre because the unborn baby needs omega. Okay, so that's just to illustrate that this one has been proved to reduce inflammation by 68% within 6 to 8 weeks. So consistent use, and now this is one product that I love. When I was younger, I used to take just one. I grew a little older, I bumped it up to 2. Now, my minimum is 3. But when I need to, I can go higher still, okay? So inflammation on your cells, and healthy cell membrane is one with low omega-3. And that will increase inflammation because there is persistent chronic inflammation. And that is the first and the number one enemy of our body. But a healthy cell has high amounts of omega-3 in the diet. And let's face it, it is very, very difficult to get all that fish, the good quality fish. It costs a lot, and if it isn't the cost, how can you vouch that it has no toxins in it? It's difficult, right? So enough omega in the diet, and you're sure that your inflammation comes down. Then there's another gap. That is the fruit and vegetable gap. We have a product called carotenoid complex. This, I often joke, apart from the soap that I was really gunning for when I first saw this opportunity, this product, somebody said 2 things. It will increase your immune capability by 37% in 20 days. I said, amazing. Much of my medical career has been spent in HIV and anything to do with the immune system. And, you know, I'm very, very keen on. So I said, okay. But the second thing was it slows down the aging process by 44%. Now, in the face of chronic inflammation, the immune system is being taxed chronically. Inflammation is high chronically. The aging process is faster as a result. And when we talk aging, we're not just talking the visible aging that you can see on top. But picture this, the blood vessels on the inside, the brain tissue, the liver. If it is aging rapidly, it won't be able to deal with the hormones and the xenoestrogens and all the metabolites that it's supposed to sort out. It won't be able to store the vitamin A properly. Okay, so that is how we need to be thinking in whole person terms and not systems, not just organs, but whole person, remembering that we are made out of cells. So I like to teach my teams that we need to know each cell is being able to be fed, to work, to reproduce, and to excrete, and ultimately to die decently. If a cell does not die decently, that's the definition of a cancer. And I think that was my first 60-somethings session that I had. Okay, so I've talked about boosting the immune system. This has been presented to scientific organizations. It is actually used, this particular product, as the benchmark for a lot of dietary recommendations. So yes, every cell takes about 10,000 hits a day of what we call free radicals. Some of them are produced in our body, but one big free radical is oxygen. Other ones like chlorine that we are exposed to, and all the environmental toxins, and the ones that we purchase in the store as well. So it happens if there is a low fruit and vegetable diet, but if there is a high fruit and vegetable diet, then the cells are protected. Then another one, the essential vitamins and minerals. We need to know that our diet doesn't supply them. We need them for nutrition to be complete. And so we have a tablet called Multi, which bridges that gap. And all that can be found, and Stella, you can also get it in Canada. In that pack, I would be so happy to be able to introduce you to it. It's available, it is affordable, and it looks like that. All the important things, and that's what we call our core nutrition. There's so many reasons to love it. It is paired with amino acids. Now, it is important to nourish the body and to repair and renew the body so that everything happens properly. So I've talked about omega-3, but let me just jump forward. I've said all these things to bring down inflammation, but the protein is so important because it will make sure that the glycemic response, the blood sugar control, is kept in a good zone and we don't have those wild swings. And if you recall at the beginning, I said insulin resistance is what is leading to belly fat accumulation, because all this sugar, the body can't quickly turn into energy. It stores initially as fat in the liver, and then from the liver, it spills over into the surrounding tissue, and over the years will accumulate as belly fat. So I hope that closes the loop, and I also hope that it has made some sense. I would like us to have a few more minutes of discussing how we can help each other to come up with some solutions. I'm sure all of us have bright ideas, and I just wanted to show you with this one particular product that we have a wide range. Not all of us eat enough broccoli, radishes, kale, and cauliflower, and all those. We have this particular product. Now, God made those things for us to be able to detox our systems. This is important in phase 2 detoxification, so that stable estrogen balance is enabled. Now, estrogen is that hormone that causes tissue growth. That's why we girls have a lot of estrogen when we are younger and having babies and all that. Now, tissue growth, including belly fat, can become a problem if the body is incapable of detoxing all that estrogen that has accumulated.